going to join us shortly. They are the principal partners of CII Summit Effects, and we thank MPL for partnering with CII for this wonderful AVGC Summit. Mr. Srinivas, Mr. Sai Srinivas, welcome to this session. I hope you got to see the inaugural session. We just ended the inaugural session a minute back, and Mr. Biren Ghose is already here. Biren, yes, over to you, Biren, for taking forward this conversation with Mr. Sai Srinivas. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much. Sai, a very, very warm welcome to CII Summit Effects 2021. It's impossible to introduce a dynamo like Sai in a few words. So all I can say is that this conversation is about trying to take you behind the scenes, as we say in entertainment, to explore the various algorithms that are working in Sai's mind there, and I know that he's on the business treadmill 24/7. So hoping to pull him out and make him reflect, looking back at this journey and looking forward. How do you describe, one of the most outstanding unicorns in our sector? Sai, you made the AVGC sector very proud with your achievements. But I think the value of what MPL does and the value of what you and your colleagues do goes beyond just a financial valuation. And I think that's what we really want to explore with you today. So may I please start by asking you to set the stage as to what were your thoughts when you founded, MPL, and it's come such a long way in such a short time. And what are your thoughts today looking ahead? So maybe we start on that, if that's okay. And thanks for being here.
Firstly, Biren, it's my pleasure and honor to be here. Really, thank you so much for that glowing introduction. I really don't think I'm deserving of such a glowing introduction, but honestly, for to have known you and to have spoken to you multiple times in the past, and for the work you've been doing in this sector over the last multiple years, it's quite remarkable. And what you've built in India, and in fact, if we today have muscle or a serious muscle in animation, thanks to stalwarts like you. So I think a lot more credit goes to you. And it's honestly on the shoulders of folks like yourself is why we are able to build companies today. If it weren't for folks like you, I don't think it would have been possible. But to answer your question about with respect to MPL and why did we start MPL, I think what we realized was that what I've always believed in right from when I started my career at Zynga is that games are very, very beautiful in the sense that the reason why they're so beautiful is games are one of those. Games is one such content which doesn't have language, right? And even animation, for that matter, it doesn't have language. There's the same animation that you make. A kid in India who doesn't even know English can still watch it and enjoy it. The same, another kid maybe in Germany who probably only speaks German also enjoys it, and someone else in the US will also be enjoying it. It's quite remarkable what games can do, right? And they're in fact the only product which actually do make that happen or enable that, right? And what I've always found very intriguing was that games very naturally create a competitive element in human beings, right? They want to compete with one another. And for us, when we started MPL, or should I say when we were about to start MPL, we thought of building a platform like that globally, where a Biren sitting out of Bangalore should be able to compete with, a Michael sitting out of New York should be able to compete with someone else sitting out of Germany in massive, large-scale tournaments, right? And that is, and that's something we realized is not there in the world. So with MPL, that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to build that platform where people could compete in tournaments, right? And we started in 2018, about 3 years back, to be honest. And we've been very lucky to have gotten to wherever we've gotten. But fingers crossed. I think there's a long way to go, and there's a long way, especially considering the fact that. Considering the fact that I think India is only at the beginning of realizing its export potential when it comes to games. when it comes to content and when it comes to monetizing this. And I think in the next 10 years, just like what the animation industry did in the last 10, I think games as a category in the next 10 is going to be a huge export center for India.
So thanks for that. I just wanted to know, you talked about where you were looking to play in this vast ocean of opportunity. How would you describe what MPL really does? Because on one hand, it looks like a large-scale digital platform. So is it a technology play? Is it an aggregator? Is it a how do you bring yourself as a brand and a company to developers, to players, to participants? There are different things happening at the front end of MPL. There are many things happening behind. So is it a combination of the different things that other media companies and others do? I mean, how would you describe that play?
Yeah, I mean, see, I think MPL is very people kind of confuse who we are, and it's only natural. As a company, we don't have a 10, 12, 15-year history. We're just 3 years old. Asking a 3-year kid what he wants to become at times can be a little confusing, both for the kid and for the person who's asking the question. And from our perspective, I think what we've done is like you said, we've basically gotten a whole bunch of different pieces of technology, and we fused it with great content, and we fused it with this layer of competition. So to a very layman, all we tell is that, if you want to participate in a tournament in any game of your choice, be it chess, be it carom, be it pool, and compete with 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 different people in India and so in the world, then MPL is your place to go to. What do we provide to the person? We provide the feeling of competition. And I think competition is very essential to our very being, right? Every day you wake up, you go to work, the reason why, because you want to compete in your field to be the best, right? The reason why I come to work is because I want to be one of the best gaming platforms in the world, right? So, and the same is with any gamer. At the end of the day, they're competing because they want to be the best at their craft, right? So I think that's a fundamental value proposition, and that's provide a means of earning recognition, and in fact a means of building a career out of gaming is what we're trying to do. In terms of what we are, right? We definitely are an aggregator backed by strong technology, backed by really, really good content. And like you said, it's a combination of different things coming together, right? So for example, till date, everybody thought that the only way to make money in games is to charge an exorbitant amount of money from customers on virtual goods, right? There's so many customers who pay thousands and thousands of rupees on virtual goods, right? But now there are more business models emerging. For example, if Biren and Sai are playing the semifinals of a tournament, and imagine if that game that Biren and Sai are playing is broadcasted, right? And if there's a large number of viewers viewing that game, you can also make money through advertising on that, right? So I think this model of this particular model of monetizing a game only in one way, I think is a bit history. I think over the course of the next 3-4 years, you will start seeing multiple different ways in which games can be and will be monetized. And MPL is just one new way of making that monetization happen.
So the stadiums of the future are changing. The franchises of the future are changing. The players of the future are changing, and the audiences of the future are changing. And therefore, are you part of this revolution that I know has happened in, for example, in Korea and Japan and certain other countries for a longer time? Are we really seeing a parallel universe from what we see in the real world, in the world of sports, as we've known it for so many years, to having something that is now, in fact, running in parallel? So there will be the traditional method of playing cricket, but there will be the esports methods of playing cricket, almost mirroring that story. Do you see that as something happening imminently?
Yes, of course. I mean, whether it's the next 1-2 years or whether it's the next 5-6 years is the question, but it will happen. And I think these are both very additive to one another, right? It's one of those things where, like, for example, take FIFA, right? The reason why football has become so popular across the world in one way is thanks to FIFA, right? The video game it's a very popular video game on PlayStation and on Xbox. And in fact, if you look at the youth in India, in fact, more youngsters today play football than they do cricket in India. And one of the reasons also is because of FIFA as a game. I think if you want to get a whole country excited about any sport today, Biren, I imagine in India, if you want to get 10 million youngsters excited about archery, or you want to get them excited about shooting, or any sport for that matter, it's impractical to assume you can take all 10 million people to a stadium and, teach them archery the best way to do it is to let them experience a video game, right? And see, hey, you know what? Do I like this? Do I enjoy this? And if you can teach people how to fly a plane in a simulator, I think compared to that, I think giving people a taste of sport in a digital format is, I think, a little more easier task, right? And which is the reason why I believe that these two worlds will coexist together, and in fact they will be very supplementary to one another, right? And in the next 4 or 5 years you will see ecosystems as big as the physical sport ecosystems being built digitally.
We've seen that in media it has been very difficult in the past, in the pre-digital era, to capture value. So generations of writers, directors, actors, when it was not digital, you could buy a movie from the pawn shop on the corner for 10 rupees, right? That has changed. And I think capturing value in this ecosystem play, as you talked about it, I think is something that may arrive differently in different countries, right? Because you have so many different things happening in the esports ecosystem.
Right.
So it has started off differently and gone a different journey. And we have later in Summit Effects, Baro Hyun, who's a writer of Demystifying Esports, the famous book, and now also heads KPFG's Japan's advisory on esports.
Yeah.
About and we were trying to ask him, hey, what will happen in startup countries, relatively startup countries like India, and how will it will go there? But my question to you is, talent has been the bane of growth. I mean, we could do twice or thrice the amount of business in, for example, animation or visual effects, if we just had the talent to do that. And I think digital literacy is something which can be greatly advantaged by games and esports, right? Like the other digital media field. So do you think that there needs to be something that is a much larger effort from government and academia and all of us in industry to really make sure that things happen at the level of art, at the level of engineering, and in this whole field? It's an opportunity, right?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg here, right? What I mean by chicken and egg is that as opportunities in the space grow, academia automatically picks up, right? For example, if you take design, right, 10 years back, design was still in its infancy in India. Today, there's so many design schools, right? Why? Because there's a bustling startup ecosystem that wants designers every single day. In every single startup, you need a designer, right? And that means you need great quality design schools, and that's the reason they've shown up. I think the most important thing to do is to ensure that we are able to build domestic opportunities and opportunities where people can work and build great quality games in business models that work for Indian economies, right? Now, there are certain business models that have worked well in the West. It doesn't mean we take those business models and just slap them in India, right? In different countries, different ecosystems. Like in India, you have to build a business model where your focus should be to charge 5 rupees or 4 rupees from 500 million people or 400 million people. That's the way our businesses need to be built, right? Unlike the West, where you can probably take 10,000 bucks from every single person who uses your product, right? It's a very, very different ballgame. The reason why I gave this example and I said it's a chicken and egg problem is that I think definitely, the industry bodies, the regulators need to come together to ensure that they create a very strong growth, or should I say very strong growth path for sunrise sectors like this, wherein they use the significant domestic demand that we have, the insanely strong consumer power that we have to fuel domestic supply. Right. And that domestic supply eventually will also be able to supply internationally. And as a function of that, grow domestic talent. And as a function of that, create more opportunities. Right. But if we don't enable sunrise sectors with clear regulatory understanding and create a path where they can build, they can attract more investment. And it's going to be hard for them to compete with global giants, right? Because even if their domestic ecosystem itself is not enabling them to grow, then it's going to be a little difficult for them to compete with some of the other global companies based out of US or maybe China or maybe other countries, right? So 10 years back, the domestic demand in India was not as high as it is today. The demand that we have is so large that now we can build our own first-person shooter big titles. We can build our own open world games, right? We have the capabilities, right? But at the same time, we need to have I wouldn't say a red carpet, but at least a path with more speed breakers along the way to attract investments, to build our businesses, and provide the opportunity for some of our young talent in the field of animation and game design.
So I think in any sunrise sector of this type, there needs to be a confluence of ideas and policy frameworks, right? Because the political framework, the economic framework, and the cultural framework kind of need to all come together, and we need to help this triangle to look at new spaces in a way where we provide information and bring growth. And I think currently, definitely, as India, we are seeing an uneven understanding of games and esports and how regulation should be helped here. I do believe that at a national level, the whole discussion at a wider than our sector, policy making around cyber laws, around personal data protection, are going to create the guardrails for all types of digital businesses, which will definitely be helpful for us as well. But specifically when it comes to games, there needs to be a more national level understanding of what are games of chance, what are games of skill, what is considered to be gambling, etc. And I think it's our duty as industry and our duty as industry leaders to bring a sensibility understanding, which is both in national and consumer interest, and as you said, and the "and" is in capital letters, can be a major driver of economic opportunity. So do you agree that I think this need to create a very, very clear articulation of what can be fair play is something that we all have to do in platforms like CII and many others, right?
100%, right? I think any frontier industry, any industry which is very new, or in other words, sunrise sectors, I think there's a lot of responsibility on the industry and the industry stakeholders to actually educate the broader community and our regulators, right? I think at the end of the day, India, the regulators in India have proven to be visionaries multiple times, be it with payments, be it with some of the other pieces that have come together, which are honestly the reasons why there's such a big bustling economy and such a big startup ecosystem, right? So you're right in saying that a significant amount of responsibility lies on us to kind of explain to the world, or in fact to our regulators, hey, you know what, this is the large ambit of games. There are different nuances in games, and each game is very, very different than the other one. And I think to their credit, I think they've been exceptionally receptive, and they've understood it. They've spent time realizing it, recognizing it, and I personally was very, very pleasantly surprised. They understand the opportunity and the space at times way better than some of our peers in the industry, right? They know how much potential this is, and they know how much value this can create for the economy and create for the broader ecosystem at large. But I still believe that we're still literally in how do I put it, the first early days of this space.
Yes.
I think the momentum that we've built over the last few years, I think we now are at a point where people understand the nuances, people understand that you can't paint everything with the same color, and I think we need to build on that. We need to build on that momentum, and we need to create standardized rules, standardized laws, for everyone in the country, and I think that is when you will see great amount of investment come in, right? Investment always comes in when there's a certain amount of surety or a certain amount of guarantee from a regulatory standpoint, and when that starts to happen, automatically that you'll start seeing more and more investments coming, larger companies being built. So yeah, fully agree.
In the favor of what I think we can do in India, even bigger, bolder, and better than any other current location, the fact that we have such a youthful population, right, has to make this a much greater opportunity than in the countries where we've already seen it flourish, right? If you take the Far East, and it also can be, in media we always talk about library value. What is the IP we have created? Content IP, titles. In sports, obviously, it's about the power of the brand, the franchises that get created. So, do you think that, like we've slowly crept from being maybe not in the front runners amongst nations that played cricket, and today we have a very prominent role in the global cricket space, right? Be it in terms of the people who set the international agenda, as well as in terms of participation, as well as in terms of revenue. The same opportunity now lies in esports, because we have
100%.
the power of the youth. Like, there's more people here in the world, right? In terms of
100%, Biren. Like, if you ask yourself about, you took a great example in cricket, right? Why did we become a superpower in cricket? Why? Because we were able to take our consumption, supercharge it, and create value for our ecosystem, right?
Right.
We were able to build an IPL, okay? And the reason and because of that, we were able to build so much talent in our bench, and at the same time create opportunities for so many young cricketers that they were able to become, world superstars, right? And to be honest, the reason why we call ourselves MPL is because we aim to do a very similar thing for esports. What IPL did for cricket, we want to enable for esports, right? And we want to enable people who take, who want to pick up a career in gaming and want to compete seriously. We want to be the platform that enables them to do that, right? I mean, you're right. I think the future is where you will see large-scale tournaments like IPL come up in esports. And just because the sheer size of our consumption, we will probably end up being 30% of the global esports consumption in terms of user base. And, as our economy becomes stronger, as our per capita grows, I think the revenues will also become equally large. So in 92, we were not amongst the highest revenue generating cricket nations in the world, right? Correct. We were, in fact, I believe, if I'm not wrong, England, Australia, and some of the other countries were way larger than us, right? But, what happened 15 years down the line? I mean, those guys don't even come close to us, right? It's just the power of Indian consumption, right? And I think you'll start seeing the same thing in gaming and start seeing the same thing in esports. So, but that's a brilliant example, to be honest. That's something even I keep telling my team internally, like, look at that, and that is where this can go to.
We've seen that certain things happened along the way that were foundational. I go back to the MRF bowling academy that started many years back. And of course, that has now been replicated everywhere. We've seen that the whole academy process has been very, very, foundational to the growth of the sector. I personally believe that the arts and entertainment is a driver of socio-economic growth for the whole country. And when there are countries like Italy that have 9% of their GDP coming from, the cultural sector, we are, we are probably, 1/9 of that, right? So there is huge headroom. Do you think that this movement can actually be taken from away from just our big cities, and the government and industry can work together with everyone to see that it goes down to tier 2 and tier 3 cities where there is so much enthusiasm, so much talent, so much firepower that is not harnessed? And I think esports can take some of this, right? It can take some of this to those interiors that also have massive potential for us.
No, absolutely, Biren. Like, for example, one of the things that we're very excited about, and we are investing money, and in fact we're investing a lot of time and energy to build out, is called College Premier League. That's our inter-college esport championship. And the beauty of esports is you don't have to worry about physical space, right? There can even be 10,000 colleges competing. You're absolutely fine, right? But in a physical tournament, if you have 10,000 colleges competing, it will probably take 5 years to finish that tournament, right? So it's that hard, right? And that's it's a great leveler, right? So anyone being in it doesn't matter whether you're tier 2 city, tier 3 city, tier 4, it doesn't even matter if you're in a small village. As long as you have internet, you will be able to compete with a person even out of, say, Nariman Point in Mumbai, right? It really doesn't matter. Everybody will be able to compete. And what India has done remarkably in the last 6-7 years is, one is we've taken internet and like practically made it almost free of cost for the whole of this country, right? The second thing which I think the government has done an extraordinary job is in UPI, right? I think it is a game changer. The way, and MPL works in multiple other countries, right? I can tell you for a fact that our payments infrastructure in India is light years ahead of even the US, right? In fact, US is probably much more behind in terms of payments infrastructure than India. Even Indonesia, for example, India is way ahead in terms of its payments infrastructure than Indonesia. So I fully agree with you that the way it's a great way to bring folks from all over the country together, create a competition that is truly fair, truly equal for everyone to be a part of and compete.
I know for a fact, Sai, that Bangalore and the government of Karnataka are very proud of your achievements being headquartered there. And I think they would be very keen through the local AVGC policy to see how we can bring esports into the fold. And I think they're very keen for us to help develop talent and technologies in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So, you've had the occasion to visit our still half-built center of excellence. And I think the government creating those kinds of infrastructural support to industries, for startups, for companies, both small, medium, and large, I think is something that, don't you think that if we could create that kind of an infra base and hub in 4 or 5 parts of India, like north, south, east, west, and central, it would give rise to a massive developer ecosystem to come and support this entire movement that you have envisioned.
I think, firstly, kudos to the government for doing what they're doing in Karnataka. I think they're very, very forward thinking in terms of all their work. I think it's also proofs in the pudding in Bangalore in terms of how Bangalore is such a bustling place for you to do anything, right? So I think a lot of credit to them. I also think that over the next 5 to 7 years, I think youngsters from across the country, as they get exposed to more and more content on YouTube and on different platforms, the interest levels to learn and understand these things is only going to get better and better. And as the interest gets better and better, automatically they will start seeking out places where they can learn. And so to that point, for them to learn these things and become participants in this movement will be very, very advantageous for us and for the industry as a whole. And I think that what Karnataka is doing is a great example of what can be done elsewhere.
So I want to kind of take you on to how will you see value getting captured? I mean, there is something in it for everyone, right? There is potential for leveraging the startup story that we are doing here. There is potential for scaling it to a level where we need sensible taxation that can, because there might be multiple points at which the esports ecosystem has to grow, right? There are people that are going to come in and participate in it. We've have similar dialogue happening in the traditional media industries, right? For example, when you now want to create certain guardrails in amongst OTT channels, right? But the advertisers there actually have a different setup with the government already. They have for many years now, the AAAI has been a self-regulating body, and they already have their own. So when you get into multiple stakeholders that come into an ecosystem like this, I think we also need to create the architecture and the forward thought around how different people will play in this ecosystem and how everybody will get their fair share from the inventors and the creators to the platforms to the government to the audience, and I mean the individual citizen. I mean, everyone must kind of feel a win-win in the whole story, right?
Right. I think you're absolutely right. I think I think the market for creation, especially in this segment, is huge. It's not only India; it's the world, right? Again, I'm reiterating that. Like, for example, if there's so much that like Japan and Japanese culture has been. Their stories have been told in gaming so many times. Their games reflect their stories. I think so much of depth in our stories also that, there's so much that you could say, and there's just so much that you could export across the world. I think it's important to realize, and it's important to view that we create an opportunity for these games and for these companies to thrive in India. I think one of the most important parts here is to ensure that there is really strong IP protection for IPs, etc., that are getting created in India. If at the end of the day, if you look at Disney, what is Disney at the end of the day? It's an IP company, right? I mean, they have so much IP.
Library.
Exactly,
Library.
right? Exactly. And I think if there is a young kid in India sitting out of his or her garage and putting together a beautiful concept and a beautiful story, then that kid should be afforded the same level of protection that a Disney was afforded back in the mid 90s or late 90s, and that kid should also have the opportunity to tell his or her story to this huge audience in India, and also have the opportunity to tell that story to the world. I think when we can start doing that in India, and when we can start exporting our stories and exporting our creativity, I think not only does the economy grow, but India as a true power in business and in creativity will also show up in the world, like you just said, right? One of the reasons why Hollywood is so popular across the world is because it's exported its stories, right? I think India has done that a little bit, but I think in the next 10 years, India is going to should do that a lot more, and for that we need to create that framework where someone building something in India can actually be afforded the same level of protections that someone in the US is, and I think that's happening, to be honest, in multiple places.
We have later in the Summit Effects, thought leadership sessions. We have something that's called turbocharging the Indian entertainment landscape, and we're going to have industry colleagues of yours. From Jetline, Rajan, and we've got people from Nordwin, and of course some colleagues from your company and many others. So I think the more conversation and the more articulation we have about this new sector, the greater the understanding for all the constituencies as to what this really is, and how it has something for everyone, and how it's going to be the next big thing. And I would be very, very much want to welcome MPL to help both at the national and state level to expand the scope of what we've called an AVGC policy, which now already has to embrace AR and VR, and really take this into making sure that esports, and I'm sure esports will be parts of many other policies, because it doesn't belong to one domain or the other. It's so wide ranging. But I think in order to give it some spotlight and focus, we would very much welcome your team members and other members from the esports ecosystem to come and articulate how we should make this a national and state level agenda. I think it's very important for
No, absolutely, Biren. I think we need forward thinking people and visionaries like yourself to kind of help us put this together and build the framework. And on with respect to MPL and ourselves, we are more than happy to play our part, lift our share of the the water. And we are more than happy to make, help in every way possible, and look forward to, in fact, working with stalwarts like yourself in putting this together. But thank you again for having me.
Just a last question, a little bit about
Yes.
Sai the individual, right? So, what keeps you up at night? How do you de-stress? How do you, when you're not thinking for 2.5 minutes about MPL and what it does next, what do you do? I mean, what are your hobbies? Maybe everyone wants to know. There's the other side of Sai.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love playing badminton. I mean, something I've always loved since I was a kid. And I mean, that is probably my number one go-to thing. I love traveling. Spend a lot of time traveling to various parts of India. It's a beautiful country. We are honestly, sometimes we underestimate the amount of things we've been granted in this country, from pristine beaches to all the way to crazy mountains. I think very few countries have that. So travel a lot. But I'm a very reserved person in the sense I personally I spend a lot of time just keeping to myself, staying indoors, I think, and just playing and just traveling. So I think that's pretty much it. I also spend time reading. But yeah, I mean, it's not like just the very normal, I think come from a very similar background as most young Indians do. My dad was a banker, mom was a teacher, so very normal upbringing, to be honest, very glad that it was a very normal upbringing, right? It kind of keeps you in touch with everything that's so great about this country and the opportunities that I've received from being a part of IIT and then being a part of this ecosystem. Always very grateful for that. I think if it weren't for these opportunities and being at the right place, right time, I think honestly, very grateful to everything that this ecosystem has given.
Thanks very much for your time today. People talk of Covishield and such brands as vaccines for physical health. I think what MPL and other esports companies provide is vaccines for mental health in these times, because you really have to find a way to get people to uplift themselves and feel energized and happy and get the adrenaline running, which I think is what you guys do. And I see you as someone that is a coder for future happiness algorithms. So I'll end on that note by saying keep hacking, keep hacking them. Keep the hack going and make sure that we can spin up more and more things for people to be engaged, to improve their cognitive abilities, for them to have fun, for them to compete, because it's going to help them in every walk of life, right? So that's I think the bigger picture of what all of us want to do is to make that happen. So, but thank you so much for being here today, Sai, and it's a real pleasure talking to you as always.
Yes, thank you, Biren. Thank you so much.
Be well. Be safe.